Good morning. So we have a smaller group today, but it reminded me of what Michio always used to say, a small group of interested people is always best. So I think this is a very important and timely topic because when things are so-called normal in society, then we have a schedule. We go to school, we go to work, so we have responsibilities, and there's some order. But what happens when most everyone, when we're isolated, social distancing, working from home, etc., then we forget about our schedule. It's one of the first things people do. And really what, you know, called this topic to mind is how many of my clients have really gotten off track, during this time and just, let things go. So the first step is always back to basics. When I counsel, I have a format and I don't vary the format. And the reason I don't vary the format, some people say, well, that's so mechanical. But I have a very clear reason for not varying that format because it allows my mind to be free. It allows my mind to be open and really concentrate and really be there for people. And I know Steve Jobs is probably one of the most creative people on the planet. And he basically had his uniform the same. He wore the same thing every day: his jeans and his sneakers and his t-shirt. And even Giorgio Armani, the designer, I heard he had a navy blue cashmere sweater that he wore every day. That was like his uniform. So the point is that order keeps us open and fresh. We can notice it easily with children. When we have order, when we have a schedule, when there's discipline, children do much, much better. When things are just haphazard, they become chaotic and they don't know what to do. So always go back to basics. And the first thing is look at your structure. The first thing to set is your rising and sleeping times. And the best sleep comes between midnight and 4 a.m. So as much as possible, be in bed by 10 p.m., 11 at the latest. And in any case, try to get up by 7. And even if you can't stay up, even if you have to do things, have breakfast and take a nap, you're still better off of starting your day no later than 7. This gets us in sync with nature. I'll come back to this. Actually, I'll go a little bit out of order here. So we have two things that gives us balance. And, macrobiotics is complicated for many people, and many people think, well, I don't really understand yin and yang. Can I practice macrobiotics? And I thought, well, yes, because balance perpetuates itself. It's one of my long-standing observations, one of the things that got my attention years ago. Balance perpetuates itself and imbalance perpetuates itself. So I thought, if we can help people create a balance, then they can automatically, not automatically, it still takes some conscious thought, but reasonably create, an overall balanced practice. So two things create our sense of balance more than anything else. One is our daily schedule, starting with our rising and sleeping times. Then second, meal times. And sorry, we've been brought up to think breakfast is the most important meal. And I can't really agree with that because lunch really, throughout the world, the noonday meal was the main meal. And I always look to history, to what people have done and what has, survived over the decades, over the centuries. And one of the things that's pretty consistent throughout the world is the noon meal, lunch meal has been the main meal, especially before the Industrial Revolution, especially before, factories and cities. So the meal, because the reason is meal times align us with nature. And one of the most important cycles we have is our blood sugar. Blood sugar has to do with our energy, has to do with our health, has to do with our immune problems. Way back in the 80s when I was actively working with people with full-blown AIDS, one of the things I noticed, they all had serious blood sugar problems, every one of them. And I started to see there's a direct connection between blood sugar and immunity. Well, when we start our lunch, we reset our biological clock. We reset our blood sugar clock to work properly. And that takes stress off of all of our other systems and helps balance us emotionally. So the first thing to get in getting back to basics and for recreating a sense of balance, our daily schedule, rising and sleeping times, meal times, especially lunch, then breakfast is second, dinner is the third most important. So if you can't keep dinner as regular, it's not as important as breakfast and lunch. Then we have what I call our biological balance. And the biological balance comes from three things. One, having a grain and separate vegetable dish with every meal, including breakfast. And I'm surprised at how many of my clients leave the vegetable dish out of breakfast. And, it seems strange, I guess, in some ways to have a vegetable breakfast. At the same time, we really need refreshing things in the morning. Vegetables are refreshing. So a grain and a separate vegetable dish with every meal, because the interaction between the two enhances each other, then soup with one meal. That's the absolute most important elements to get into our diet. And the other thing, especially in the summer, thing that so many people leave out is soup. And Susan's going to talk about the cooking and food and some other things in relation to salt. I'll leave it at that. So the very minimal to get in your diet to create a balance is a grain and separate vegetable dish with every meal, keeping grains and vegetables equal or more vegetables and grains than soup. So as long as we go back to this, then we can always maintain a relative balance, throughout our life in most any circumstance. The next thing, to be healthy, we have to keep things moving. Whatever can't move stagnates. So indoor air is much more polluted than the outdoor air because you can't have the same circulation indoors. Standing water putrefies. When you don't use a room regularly, it doesn't feel right. So in order to keep fresh, in order for our body to repair and renew itself, we have to keep everything moving. And the most important things, I know a lot of things are review, but we often overlook the obvious. So I've learned to try to not disregard what's most obvious, because the most obvious is what people are most likely to forget. It's second nature. So the number one is eating slowly and chewing well. And I can't emphasize that enough. The pace at which we eat sets the pattern of health. And weight, if weight is your problem. The faster people eat, the more weight they gain. Now people just gulp their food down, everybody's getting bigger and bigger. But it's not only weight, it takes about 20 minutes to really have a sense of the effect of the food on us. So eating slowly and chewing well are two separate things, but they create natural circulation. The second thing is walking outside, especially in nature, where you can get sunshine and fresh air. And this is extremely lacking now because a lot of people are afraid to go out or go out very little, or go out with a mess where they can't breathe properly and get fresh air and sunshine. So in order to keep our energy moving and fresh, if we can create a thing to walk in nature where there's some fresh air and sunshine, it does wonders for our health. And then finally, to do the body rub, a complete 15 minutes. Every time someone comes to see me, I ask them, do you do a body rub? Second question, at the sink. Third question, for 15 minutes. Then the number of people that say, oh no, I do it every day, but I do it 5 to 10 minutes. Well, if you chew 10 times, it's one thing. If you chew 20, it's another, 30, 40. The ideal, if you want to improve your health, is try to get up to 50. If you want to maintain your health, 20 to 30 is good. I mean, it's good. The body rub's the same. 5, 10, and 15 minutes are very different from each other. When you get to 15 minutes, you've moved your energy enough to make a shift. So my recommendation is when you do the body rub, do it very, very carefully. Then the next thing is autopilot gets us into trouble in every case, what I call natural tendencies. So for example, when we're stressed, should we make our diet more simple or more varied? Well, the answer is more varied, because stress is pressure, it's constricting. More varied keeps us open. What do most people do? They simplify their diet. Almost everyone does that because that's a natural tendency, right? If you don't have time, so you think, to eat without doing other things, and what do people do? They start bringing things into their meals. Well, the reality is whatever you do when you eat, you absorb. That means if you're watching the news, you're absorbing it. If you're reading the news, you're absorbing it. If you're working, you're absorbing your work. That means if we do other things, because human interest is not reported much, heartwarming stories are not reported much, even that is not ideal, but at least it's better than what's reported today. So that's what we're eating, we're absorbing with our food. If we talk with each other, then literally we're absorbing each other. We're deepening our connection and understanding. And if one thing's changed since I was born in 1949, TV became popular in 1953, started to become popular. McDonald's, 1955. So I consider the modern age beginning in 1955. Well, growing up, of course, my family wasn't macrobiotic. When my mother cooked every day, we had 21 meals at home a week. Until I was a teenager, my mother went back to work, and then I had money in my pocket, and there were fast food restaurants, and started to go out. First, one meal a week with my friend when I was younger, then more and more. So the one thing that, I mean, it's not one thing, but one of the most important things that's changed over the years is families don't eat and talk together. And that's a huge difference because, as I said, whatever you do when you eat, you absorb it. So if you're with someone and you're eating and talking, you're absorbing and connecting and deepening your communication with that person, mind-to-mind communication, the most important communication. So that means try not to get loose. Keep your structure strong with things that are important. Then the next important thing is, my saying is, if it's trendy, it's most likely not good. So what's trendy now? Well, gluten-free is trendy, right? The gluten grains are some of the most important grains on the planet, and they're very important for richness and nourishment in our diet. Think of Italy, that is famous for farro, right? Kind of wheat, and their creativity that they have. In Europe, bread was the staff of life. So at any rate, gluten-free is trendy. That means, if you ask me right off, there's something wrong with it. It's not supporting our health. Several years ago, I was at a Colin Campbell lecture when he was in Philly. Someone asked him about gluten-free, and he said there was no science behind that really you don't have to pay any attention. There's really no reason to avoid gluten. And then he said, Denny, what do you think? So I gave my answer about the importance of gluten grains, which I was happy to be able to give to the audience. But if it's trendy, it means, okay, the vast majority of people in our country are unhealthy. Unhealthy people crave unhealthy things. Health craves health, sickness craves sickness. So when you're healthy, you crave healthy things. That means you're looking for healthy food, you're looking for organically grown, you're looking for locally grown, you're looking for cotton products, etc. down the line. You're looking for a more natural environment for your home, you're looking for healthier friends and healthier vacation places. Health craves health. Well, sickness craves sickness. Most people in a society are unhealthy. So what do they crave? Unhealthy things. That means if something becomes trendy, it's trendy to unhealthy people. Then fear of soy, that's trendy, right? Because of phytoestrogens, which are completely wrong. CBD products are trendy. I mean, trendy everywhere. Another thing I just found out that's trendy, and I don't even know if there's anything wrong with it. Sea moss. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I mean, it's a traditional food in Ireland and in Britain. Maybe it's fine, but maybe the quality is not good. But point is, when something is trendy, then we need to think about it. Is that a good trend? Who's starting that trend? Now, the exception will be when macrobiotics becomes the rage. Because when health becomes the rage, becomes trendy, we'll know society is changing. Then we finally made a real difference. So then I'll be happy when I can eat my words that saying that trendy is not good, when trendy is the best thing when it applies to macrobiotics or real health. Okay. Next important thing. Most people, and this is my long time observation, most people choose healthy over satisfying. So we have our food list. We have all of our grains. We have all of our vegetables. We have all of our beans, seeds, nuts, fruits. And if you eat it, fish, and other foods. So we have foods in every category. So people will choose the healthiest things. They'll say, well, brown rice is the healthiest grain, so I'm going to eat plenty of brown rice. Miso soup maybe is the most important soup, so I'm going to eat, plenty of miso soup. Kale and collards are the best greens, so I'm going to eat plenty of kale and collards. But what do all those choices mean? What those choices mean is getting more yang, because those things are more yang. In other words, what I'm saying, when you think you're choosing healthy foods, you're making yourself more yang, more constricted. Now, and I know Susan's going to talk about, if we choose satisfying rather than healthy, because everything in our recommended food list, everything there is healthy. It's all healthy. Couscous is healthy, bulgur is healthy, pasta is healthy. But again, when I ask my clients, what are you choosing? Then I get the healthiest foods. They're too tight. The answer is very simple. So choose satisfying over healthy. Because it's all healthy. You're still choosing health, but you're trying to connect with what you need and what's important to you. Then it's very important to take advantage of the rest of the summer. This I mean, okay. We need more oxygen during the day and less at night. We need more oxygen during the summer and less in the winter. Many people think it's not a good idea to have green plants in your bedroom at night because they take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide. So many people think that's not good, but that's a natural cycle. By getting less oxygen at night because we have green plants, then we get better oxygen during the day when we need it, right? So day and night play off of each other. Summer and winter play off of each other. So we think of sunshine as vitamin D, but sunshine is much more than that. Okay. In macrobiotics, we say spring begins early February, around Groundhog's Day. That's a traditional beginning of spring in Celtic society. And they were much more aligned with nature and with the earth than we are. The sites for their temples and monuments are the most powerful places on the planet. But at any rate, so starting with February, then our energy wants to open up. And we can observe nature. We see nature is all coming into full bloom. Then we go out and we're exposed because the days are getting longer, starting December 20th, 21st. The days are getting longer each day. So then we go out, the angle of the sun is getting higher. We're exposed to more daylight. We're exposed to more ultraviolet radiation. But that makes us want to be more social and connect with our friends outside. However, what happened this year, February, March, lockdown. So instead of opening up, we're shutting down. That means now it's beginning of August. Fall energetically really begins mid-August. In other words, the most important part of the summer is almost already gone. But in any case, until the beginning of October, please make every effort to get outside, to get fresh air, to get sunshine, and to connect with people in the best way possible, to socialize, to reconnect. If you can't do it around meals, then without meals, to socialize, because what do we do in the summer? We picnic. We're socializing over food outside. So the reason this is important, because this re-nourishes us energetically. It recharges our immune system. It keeps our immune system, active and fresh, and it recharges our intuition. Then the fall comes, not so bad, but then the winter comes, cold, dark, inside more. In order to do well in the winter, then we need to have this charge from the spring and summer. So one of my biggest fears, a blog I did recently, is what happens if there's a second wave of COVID? Then it's going to be much worse than it should be or need be, because people didn't recharge their immune systems. They didn't recharge their intuition. They didn't recharge their energy. So what I'm saying, one of the most important things is take advantage of the rest of the summer. Get out as much as you can, whenever in a nature setting, and however you can socialize is to yours and everyone else's advantage to build your energy, your intuition, and your immunity. Then if we have a second wave, healthy people are okay anyway. Because, what I've been saying, it's not age that makes you susceptible. It's not even pre-existing problems. It's the diet and lifestyle that creates the pre-existing problems. Right? So that means to be safe, do the things we're talking about, and recharge your immune system, energy, and intuition. That's the best you can possibly do. Next, energy aligns. One of the things I say in our seminars is that when you're together with other people, after about 20 minutes, our breathing, our heartbeat, and our blood pressure align. In order to feel comfortable with someone, those three factors need to be able to align quickly and easily. If one can't, you don't feel comfortable with that person. They make you feel uncomfortable. So everybody knows certain people we look forward to seeing because they make us comfortable. Certain people make us uncomfortable. Why? Because they're different energetically. Our energy can't align naturally. Well, how do you align with your health? Well, the best way is take a refresher course in macrobiotics. If you can't take one that's actually on site, at least then take one do one online, because even that, because visual education helps us to realign energetically. And again, health craves health, sickness craves sickness. So if you're not around people that are interested and dedicated to health, then you get pulled away from health. It's automatic. It doesn't mean how good your understanding it is. It doesn't mean how strong your will is. It doesn't mean how well intentioned you are. It has nothing to do with that. Energy aligns with energy. Okay, energy. So if we want to maintain our long-term health, we need to reconnect with healthy people. In person is number one, online number two, but not hearing. It has to be visual. It creates a much stronger alignment when we can see. Then the final thing is, please read our book carefully. This is not a commercial for questions, but the reason I say that is, okay, I spent years and years putting my counseling booklet together. And I revise it all the time. I mean, I'm crazy about it, making sure my clients have the most up-to-date information, what I think is the most accurate and up-to-date. I can't tell you how many of my clients don't read it. They barely look through the recommendations. I mean, that's strange. It's your time and your money, and here's a resource that is, literally invaluable. So few people really read it carefully, and a lot of people just lose it. So, okay. Figure, if it's just a little counseling booklet that's, 45 pages, what about our book? But, what Susan and I did, we said, what can we do to give our whole experience and understanding with macrobiotics? How can we give it to people so they have it? And, when Michio wrote the book of macrobiotics, I thought, this is the Bible of macrobiotics. If you want one book that has the philosophical basis of macrobiotics, that's it. Because it incorporates George Osawa's, most important writings. Herman and Michio are aligned closely enough, so you get really the essence of macrobiotics, but that's the philosophical essence. It's not the practical essence, without too many esoteric things. Well, the ultimate guide to eating for longevity is the practical handbook for health. I think of it the Bible of health for diet, lifestyle, and delicious, healthy cooking, which means you can't read it enough, if you ask me. The way I learned these things is I read everything and went to every seminar again and again and again. Maybe I'm thick, maybe I'm slow, I don't know. But I realized every time I went back to something, I learned something new. Sometimes I have to read the book to remember something I said a while ago that I forgot about, as you get on to new things. So in any case, these are the ways to always update and keep your practice fresh and keep yourself moving towards health, because it is not an automatic process. No matter how much you know. I mean, this is my life, this is what I do, but I need to rethink, go back to basics all the time and think, am I really in balance? Am I really doing everything, forgetting things? And it's only by mindfulness or conscious effort that we continue to move towards health for our entire life. And it becomes more challenging as society gets stranger. Health is more of a challenge, but it is definitely accessible if you do these things. So we're going to have Q&A at the end, and Susan's going to come over and introduce her topics.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. It's a very beautiful day here in Philadelphia, and we're happy to share this morning with you. So I'm going to pick up a little bit where Denny left off, and I want to talk about revitalizing your practice and creativity in cooking. And probably that might be one of the most important things that you can do for yourself, gaining inspiration and just like trying out really like new recipes. So I think the most important thing is whenever we do menu planning, there are several questions that we ask one another. So Denny and I recommend that we plan all the meals around grains or grain products, grain dishes itself, and vegetable dishes, and then soup with one of the meals. All other foods are really a supplement to like those three dishes, which you can like include or you cannot include, and you can include in different like quantities. But just to recap, grain dishes, vegetable dishes, and soups. Incidentally, anything you cook in together with the grain is part of the grain dish. So vegetable fried rice does not count as it's like a grain and vegetable together. That's a specific grain dish. The same goes with soup. Anything you cook into soup is part of the soup. So if you have like grain vegetable miso soup, or if you have a little millet cooked in a vegetable soup, it doesn't count as your grain for the day, it counts as your soup for the day. So I just wanted to make those things clear before I really begin. So then the fourth question you always ask yourself in menu planning is, what other foods do I need to feel nourished and satisfied? And I work with a lot of people with menu planning, and I do consulting with a lot of moms and how to feed their families and everything. And that's probably the most important question you want to ask, really. What else do I need to feel nourished and satisfied? And you always try to find that within, you know, like healthy foods. So you can make some adaptations. For example, say you're craving something like, what I was going to say, like ice cream or something like that. People do crave ice cream, dairy. So how would I maybe like satisfy that within like macrobiotics? Well, maybe what that's telling you is you need more sweet and creamy foods in your life. Maybe you need more like a creamy type of dessert that you would have within macrobiotics, like, you know, like almond cream with fresh berries. Or maybe you want to make some like watermelon sorbet, because watermelon's great at this time of year. You can certainly make those foods vegan, and you can make them in a healthful way. So that's just a little example. I don't want to go too far off the course here. So basically, when you're thinking of what's going to make you feel nourished and satisfied, you want to think of what cuisines really like inspire you the most. What inspires your creativity? What do you look at and say, God, I really want to eat that? You know, like that looks beautiful. Or if you're like flipping through a recipe book and you see a picture of something, you're like, wow, you know, like this looks like something that looks great. And I find that a lot of different ethnic type foods and dishes or traditional dishes, to me, I find inspiration there. I also find inspiration sometimes when I go out to restaurants, a good restaurant, where I'll pick a dish, and sometimes I even will scan the menu and ask if I can like mix and match things from certain dishes to make it a vegan dish. Most cases, places I go are pretty accommodating. So then that gets my mind thinking. I was like, well, how can I make this dish, maybe replicate this, or make this even more healthy? So the cuisines that I'm thinking about, and they're kind of like the easiest to follow, are basically ethnic cooking that centers their cuisine around grains, grain products, vegetables, and bean dishes. So basically you have the whole Mediterranean area there, a lot of Middle Eastern dishes from that region. You can find grain, vegetable, bean, Asian foods, and then also like Mexican food and some of the foods you find in the Caribbean. Some Cuban foods can be, but that usually lends itself a little bit more towards the meat. But there are definitely different things that you can find there too, or recipes that perhaps you can change, eliminating meat from a lot of different things. I do that a lot when I look at some traditional family type recipes. So I grew up in Pennsylvania Dutch country. And while I didn't really eat a lot of meat growing up, the way things are done there oftentimes are like meats cooked into different dishes. So they would do like a thick barley soup, but there was a little bit of maybe like beef that was cooked into that. And later in the recipe section, I actually included a family recipe that can be made completely vegan. And of course, that's what my recipe is reflective of. Because again, if it was a large family, like the family my mother grew up in, there were 8 children, and they didn't always have the money to like buy meat or anything like that. So a lot of families had large gardens. You ate what was in season from that garden, and you just simply didn't make meat in dishes. So like turnips were a big thing, and that dish has like features green beans cooked with like together with kidney beans. Okay, so let's go back here. So again, that brings in mind, you want to look at different recipes. If you're looking maybe off of the internet, or if you're flipping through, you know, like a food magazine, and or even if you're out to dinner somewhere, and think of like, well, how can I maybe like alter this recipe a little bit and make it in a more healthful way? Even if this dish is vegan, sometimes you know things that or in vegan dishes that are really not that healthy. Like, you know, like people have been known to like ground up cashews in something to like thicken a soup or a stew. Well, you don't really need to do that. You know, like the way you thicken a soup for a creamy soup is you just simply add more vegetables to that, or like a creamy bean soup. You just add more beans and a little less water. And when you puree it, you have a creamy, nice, thick soup, because that's not something that was traditionally done. And then, of course, you're going to make it in a more healthy way, because you're probably using way better quality oil at home. If you are using oil, you're probably using good quality sea salt. So right then and there, you have 2 ingredients that you're already improving a dish. Together with that, most likely you're using organic vegetables too, and organically grown beans and grains and things. So again, big improvement there. And then there's the order in which you add things. So in our book, like a photo op here, The Ultimate Guide to Eating for Longevity, when I do recipes, I have an order in the way I add things. And I do that for a reason. The reason being is that's the most balanced way that maybe salt can be added at a particular time, so that the salt is assimilated into a dish, or also like oil. If you're adding it at the beginning, or even if you're adding it at the end to like a pasta dish, just a little bit at the end, but then still folding it in while something's like still warm. So all those things like that are done for a specific reason. So when Denny said to read that book from front to back, before you even begin to like cook a recipe in there, you want to scan the whole ingredient list and really scan and give it a good look of like how, you know, like what's the intention, what's the way that, you know, like I intended for this like to be prepared, because there's seriously like a reason in everything I do. And then together with that, certain dishes, even in our book, there are dishes that are meant to like, you know, like say you can mix and match different vegetables. So maybe someone needs to relax their condition more, and they don't want to use something like kale, and they don't want to use something arugula. Maybe they want to add spinach to white beans. Then maybe there's somebody else who needs to retain good minerals, and they choose to use like spinach. It's like something like broccoli or arugula or kale, something that has a little bit more fiber and has more minerals to it. So there's all kinds of things like that that, you know, like you can do to, again, change things in any type of vegetable dish or stew or bean dish, etc. If there's spices in a dish, do you really need spice to make this particular dish work? In most cases, you don't. Garlic is nice and it adds a little bit of flavor, but you don't necessarily need it all the time. The same thing with like hot peppers. You don't need that to like really like make or break the dish. Certain things too. I know I have things like, cumin in some things, and sometimes I add like harissa to different things. And you can add that, or you can choose not to add that. That's like very simple. So if you know you're susceptible to spice, as in it doesn't make you feel really great, or it affects you in some other way that's not to your benefit, then it's fine to leave things like that out. And then, do your food choices actually support your health? So that goes back to, what do you need to feel satisfied? So again, if you decide you're going out, or you're somewhere in a grocery store, and if you see like a vegan cake or lots of vegan cookies or whatever, and you look at the ingredient list, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, some might be made with sugar, some might be made with like, like rice syrup and that. Bottom line is, how are you going to feel after you eat that? You might feel good in an hour. You might feel fine in 2 hours. Maybe in 3 hours, it will just like make you crash and your energy drops. Maybe you feel fine that day, but what about the next day? Are you going to wake up with good energy? Are you going to feel sluggish? What about the night? Are you going to sleep well if you eat that particular food? That's why I said about spices. A lot of cases, like strong spices, especially the hot chilies and things like that, not so much ginger or horseradish, wasabi, but like a lot of the chilies can really interfere with sleep. It can make people have night sweats, or just like, make some people just like toss and turn and wake up, because they're designed to like really like let off heat and disperse heat and energy. So all those things you really want to think about when you're making your food choices. So it's not just about like the moment, but really about like how well you're going to sleep and the next day, and really moving forward with your health. Because like one bad night of sleep is definitely going to affect the next day. And if you have several bad nights of sleep in a row, that's going to just like continue. So all those things you want to like, really like keep in mind when you're making your food choices. Same thing too with like certain things that create like a lot of mucus. And there's like certain, like macrobiotic foods that can create like a lot of mucus. Again, like a lot of like baked foods, or even things that are like creamy desserts that can still create a little bit of like congestion and mucus. So how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel in the long run? Not just like in the moment. So with all that in mind, the recipes I chose were a pasta dish. This is something, the first one is something that I adapted from a restaurant that we used to go to in Philadelphia, a local restaurant. They're no longer in business, but it was like a vegan dish and very simple to make. Zucchini's in season right now. You could also substitute yellow summer squash for that particular dish. If you want to alter this just like a little bit, that would certainly work. Or if you just wanted to do like, like eliminate like the zucchini altogether, it probably would still work and work, like just fine. You could maybe like add a leek to it, which would be a little bit different. You have to cook that a little bit longer, but it certainly would work with that particular dish. And then the next thing, my green beans with kidney beans. This is an old family recipe. It's a Pennsylvania Dutch recipe. And like I said, some people would make it completely vegan. Other people, sometimes some people would cook a little like bacon with it. Or I've seen like ham cooked with it. My family didn't do that. And then the other alteration is I've actually seen some people add potatoes to this particular dish, or which you could probably add like diced parsnips if you wanted kind of like that effect. Or I've also seen fresh corn on the cob, like corn that's been cut off on the cob. My great aunt used to add that to this dish. So those are like 3 or 4 different ways that you can change this a little bit again, and experiment with it. Enjoy your time, have fun with cooking, and yeah, play in your kitchen. So Denny's coming back right now, and I believe we're going to be ready to take some questions now.
All right, excellent, excellent. Thank you both, Denny and Susan, for all of those great tips. So just as she said, we're going to move right along into our question and answer portion. So all of you are currently muted. If you so choose, you can either, well, I'm going to change the way my view looks here so I can see everyone. So if you have a question, you can either send it directly in the chat, as I see one individual has done so already. You can either use the raise hand function on the chat side, or if I can see you and your camera's on, you can also just raise your hand like that as well too. So I'll go in the order in which I see. As a reminder, for those who received the email, trying to make all questions in relation to the topic at hand, trying to also make sure that you're not using asking questions that are too complex or questions that you would reserve more to a counseling session. This is meant to be more general to the topic and more in terms of a group setting. So our first question here is, why are safflower and sunflower oils considered inflammatory? I have read somewhere where they had the opposite spin.
The only 2 oils that are able to be produced completely naturally are olive oil and sesame oil. Both have a 6,000-year history of being made without any solvent extraction, just mechanically pressed. So, I mean, that's commonly accepted as the most helpful oils. Sunflower, plus they're much more balanced as far as foods, both sunflower and safflower. So sunflowers are extremely yin, such a tall thing and facing the sun. And safflower is not quite as yin as sunflower. So I think it's more a matter of balance. So sesame is the yang's, like the driest oil, so to speak. Olive oil is the most, luxurious, rich oil. It moves more to the surface. Sesame moves more inside. So they together have the combined health benefits. But as far as all other oils, I would say sunflower and then safflower oil, and also because they're more heat resistant, will also have a place in healthy cooking.
What I was going to add is that, yeah, we usually only use safflower or sunflower oil if we were deep frying, and you can always like combine those 2 oils too. That certainly does work. But, honestly, we really do very, very little deep frying. Recently, I cooked a special dinner for a friend's birthday, and it was like I did some shishitos in a little bit of like safflower oil. But certainly, you can fry things. I wouldn't recommend using sesame oil because it totally foams. So you don't want to deep fry in that. I wouldn't really recommend deep frying, so to speak, in olive oil. But you can pan fry, as in like adding just a little bit more oil. Like say if you're making like bread to add to like a bean dish. And you're doing it more crouton style, you can just, or tempeh too, like even, you can add like maybe about like a 1/4 inch to the pan. You want to heat it a little bit, and then you add your thing, fry it on one side, flip it over, fry it on the other side. But you just want to be like really careful because that can burn. So if it smokes or anything, then you kind of have to discard it. So yeah, and olive oil, good olive oil is kind of expensive. So if you're pan frying, I wouldn't use your most delicious, perfect salad oil or a finishing oil for anything like that.
I'd like to add on to that. Georgia Saw, as I've mentioned many times before, fashioned macrobiotics after Japanese temple cooking because the monks had such health and longevity and vitality. And they used tempura and frying regularly. And those things became a regular part of macrobiotic cooking as well. But the thing is, we're not traditional people. We're not meditating for hours a day. We're not getting up at 3 in the morning. We're not living in nature, very, very close to nature with almost, of course, with zero air conditioning and, not much heat. So they had such a natural lifestyle, which probably made balance for the frying. But as time goes on in modern society, as Susan mentioned, we use frying less and less. And every time I have it, I don't enjoy it the way I used to.
No.
And we make a very strong effort never to let the oil get too hot. When we saute, we add water right away to keep the oil from getting hot and spreading the oil, or we add oil, during cooking or at the end of cooking, so it can never get too hot, boiling past 212. And I think for people now to use the highest quality oils and sparingly, I'm saying, we shouldn't be afraid of oil, but the heat factor in oil, I think, is a very, very important one, because our lifestyle gets more removed from natural as time goes on.
Actually,
We have to adjust to some of that. No, I'm done.
Actually, and have one more thing to add. Honestly, like for me, the longer I practice macrobiotics, things that when I first started practicing, I really craved more. Like I remember, like amasaki. Oh, I loved amasaki. Of course, that's when Charlie Kendall was still making, and it was like the most delicious amasaki I've ever had. And like I would drink a lot of that, but then as like years go on, I think I just like wasn't craving that. And I think that's because my condition changed, that I really was eliminating past foods. Like I said, I didn't really eat a lot of meat, but I did eat cheese and hard cheese, and all those things, like affect like your pancreas and your spleen and the central organs there. So, like you tend to like crave a little bit more sweets or creamy sweets. I ate a lot of ice cream too growing up. I loved ice cream, especially homemade ice cream. And then the same thing with like deep fried stuff. I think when you start like eliminating those particular foods from your diet, I'm not like a big advocate for French fries, because you go out somewhere and even though it's vegan, probably the oil that anybody's using is really like bad oil. I mean, you can just like smell it. So, it's just not something like I crave so much, because like I said, if you are actively moving and your body is circulating well, you start to discharge those things and you start to eliminate different foods and oils and things like that from the past. And you're replacing that with healthy foods. So then your taste lends itself more towards like the healthy foods and making healthier choices. I'm done.
All righty, thank you. So let me see here. Michelle, I'm going to unmute you right now, but I would say if you can ask maybe just one of the questions that you have here, unless you want me to just address them myself. So just let me know, please.
Unmute.
Okay.
Hi, Michelle. I'm on my cell phone today, so I don't have access to my camera, but I think I wanted just a couple of quick answers if possible, like how many plants in the home and how many plants in your bedroom. And like I have maybe 5 total, but I have a pretty big space, but it's also down in like a basement. Like some of it's a little bit, it's like above ground, but a lot of it isn't. And then what else did I ask? the oils, rice bran oil, grapeseed oil, probably you're going to give me a thumbs down, the grapeseed. And another thing was the bed. You talked about two other things before, and it has to do with health in this time of the season, I think, is the linen for the cotton. You said 100% cotton sheets and bedding. And then can you have 100% linen and hemp? Would that be okay? And then I think the last question I wanted to ask, if I can think of it because I can't see it now. It was in the chat. Oh, I can't see it. Oh, I can't see it. That's fine for now. Thank you. If you can remember what I said.
Okay, I'll start if that's okay with Denny.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so yeah, I currently have a lot of houseplants, which is cool. And if something breaks out, I even root it, and then we'll like have like a brand new plant. So probably I have a little bit more than I need, but I have a lot of like little plants, and then I have some like very, very big plants that I've had for like a long time. I think you don't want a jungle. You know, I can't say I have a jungle anywhere, but I have a lot of like smaller plants, like in a teak tower in the bathroom. And so I keep plants in the bathroom. And then like as things grow, then you do have to kind of like find homes for them, like in different parts of the house. So I have plants in the kitchen, plants in the bathroom, plants in the bedroom, and then some larger plants in our living area. If you can see as we play, I have some plants going on in the background there too. I don't think that's too many right now. It's not jungly or anything like that. So that's my answer. Too many plants in my backyard right now because I seeded some plants during quarantine and they prospered. I didn't have the heart. I gave a lot away, but I didn't have the heart to like, you know, just let them die. Anyway, so I have that. As far as bed sheets, so I am a big fan of linen. I have some like linen duvet cover that I just use that. And then I have an organic cotton bottom sheet, and I have like linen pillowcases, but I also have organic cotton pillowcases. So I kind of like mix and match. I don't know if I would like the bottom sheet to be linen, but I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with it. And linen is grown without chemicals. So I'm gonna talk about.
You know, I just remembered the last question. This had to do with starting your first meal. If you can hold off till noon, I heard that this would be probably the best for your inner system to reboot itself. And is there any specific drinks like green juice or something to drink during that fasting period?
To help your immune system reboot, is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you talked about the intermittent, I forgot the words, fasting.
Right. Sweet vegetable drink is probably the most harmonious remedy that we have.
Just can't do it every day.
And you can't do it every day for too long, but you can certainly do it for a few weeks. And anybody could do it for that. You know, I just had a comment about cotton versus linen. They're both natural, so they're both wonderful. However, as a general principle, the softer the material means the more balanced in any case. So if you have softwood versus hardwood, pine versus oak. I mean, oak is durable, but pine is, you know, actually for health is superior. Cotton is softer. Japanese earthenware, the soft clay compared to stainless or cast iron has unique, you know, healthful benefits. So it's not to put down because we love cast iron, we love stainless, we love linen, but just as a principle, what is softer is more absorbent and more balanced, has some unique healthful qualities. So
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, the linen I have, it's French. It was like woven in Portugal. It's like it's really soft. So,
Wow.
not scratchy. Scratchy about it, or I wouldn't like that. My preference is sheep too, as opposed to like the sateen. Sateen's softer, but percale sleeps cooler.
Oh, wow, helpful. Thank you.
All right. So our next question here seems to be about Amazaki. Let me see. It says, I know how to make it fresh. Would having it fresh 3 to 4 times of the day be a nice, refreshing drink?
Hamasaki?
Yeah. And also too, I'll mention this for anyone who asks a question in the chat. If for some reason that it comes through and it's not how you intended to ask it, feel free to let me know and we can unmute you to also ask it verbally.
That's a lot of amasake.
Too much.
I mean, amasake I think of as a full winter beverage a few times a week, right? A few times a day. I mean, in the summer, we gravitate more towards soy milk, even soy original, because it's much more, it disperses heat naturally, whereas amasake doesn't. Amasake is building energy inside.
It's also like homemade amasake usually gets like really super thick, almost like a pudding. It's much thicker than that. So there's like 3-4 times a day would be like way too much. Yeah, 3 times a week is fine, or 4 times a week, but a day too much. I think somebody's waving in the background, Tehran.
Hi, I didn't mean 3 or 4 times a day. I meant at that 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon when your blood sugars are getting a little lower. That was, you know, but I understand, more of a winter drink. Use it for puddings and things like that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I would not drink it 3 or 4 times a day. Thank you.
I would actually try carrot juice or carrot combination juices. That's like really helpful at that time of day. Usually I often build snacks into like menus that I do for people. And that's one of the biggest things that I'll recommend, like carrot combination juice, like carrot, apple, orange, or carrot, leafy greens, something like that, is just like more balanced. Or melon. Melon's great at this time of year, like watermelon and berries. That's a nice snack.
All right. So it's almost 11:05. At this time, if anyone does have any further questions, please send them now. I'm going to close the chat at 11:05, and then I think we can take maybe a few more questions up until 11:10. So at 11:05, I will be closing the chat, and then any other questions will have to be addressed verbally. So our next question is, I find that rice bran oil is too heavy in cooking. Your opinion?
We don't use it. I don't know that I've ever used it. I've only ever, like, honestly, I've used safflower oil if I deep fry. I have used sunflower oil too. And olive oil and sesame oil. I've never used it.
No, when I was in Japan, I did come by some naturally made rice bran oil, which was used for like skin disease or things like that. Then when I saw rice bran oil here, there's no relationship to the natural rice bran oil that I saw, when I was in Japan. So like Susan said, it's not something we've ever used, and I just don't recommend it.
I mean, years and years and years ago, we're talking a lot of years ago, there was organic corn oil, which I've used in baking some things. And then I've already used like almond oil, not almond, rather walnut oil in some baking, but I actually prefer using olive oil in baking. And I try to find one that doesn't have any type of bitter finish to it. So you don't want one that's like green. Some olive oils lend itself to more of the green color, but you want one with kind of like a more neutral, buttery type of flavor if you're going to use it for a dessert. And that works great. It works great too for like a pie crust. You can freeze it, and then when you pull it out to go to make your crumbs for your pie crust, it behaves kind of more like, I guess, Crisco or the traditional lard or butter. It's a little softer than butter would be.
All right. Our next question that we have, what if I do walk daily or every other day, and then the other days in between, I decide to walk on a treadmill at the gym? Is that okay?
Well,
I didn't even know gyms were open.
Okay.
They're not open here.
They are.
number one is to walk outside. Number two is to walk inside, even in a mall. Number three is on a treadmill. It's not normal movement. You know, the thing about walking outside, besides the openness and refreshingness, is the, you know, actually the jarring of a walk outside. And even if it's, you know, on the land, it's sending an energy wave through your bones, through your joints, and also walking outside, the bottoms of your feet and the two chambers of your brain are directly connected. Every step is really recharging your brain and keeping your brain, you know, younger. So you don't get any of that on a treadmill. And I'm sure you're going to find some study that says, well, walking on a treadmill has some benefit. I mean, there probably is, but again, I would, you know, in that order, walk outside. Number one is in nature. Number two, walk outside in the middle of the city with tall buildings. Number three, walk inside anywhere, in your home or even in a mall or wherever. Then as the absolute last resort would be a treadmill.
Yeah, there's usually tracks in some gyms or some old-fashioned gyms, like oftentimes like around a basketball court, there's like a little track.
Yeah.
I guess that would be like the last before the treadmill thing. I mean, what I recommend when the weather is cold, invest in some good warm clothes. Like a nice jacket that's, you know, like cuts the wind, and like some good shoes to be outside. Invest in a nice pair of long underwear. Dual Fold makes wonderful long underwear that is cotton. It's double layer. It's hard to find anymore because everything's so synthetic, but it's like double layer cottons next to your skin and then merinos on the outside. And you can certainly layer things like that. Then like scarves, neck gaiters, hats, and stuff like that, because it's really healthy to be outside in cold weather and breathing that cold air into your lungs. It really strengthens your lungs and helps like eliminate like a lot of like gunk and prevent really like stagnation from taking place. So I would just like encourage you to do that, even when it's cold.
Great. This may be our final question unless another person asks one verbally, but this was from the chat. Any suggestions on safe plants for cats that you have?
Okay, so you want to go online and you want to Google that, and then there's like some discrepancies sometimes. Spider plants are fine. Peperomia plants are fine. Palms are fine. Most ferns are fine. They have some Norfolk pines, and those don't usually get nibbled on or anything like that. Pothos, I think, are a little bit toxic, but that's not what they usually go to nibble on if they go for things. Anything that's kind of spiky and like moves and stuff like that, that's a cat toy. I have some of those, but yeah, you don't want to do that. I think, you know, like some plants that are going to be like high up, like a pothos is usually like high up anyway because it binds down. So your cat's most likely not going to get that, but that's not one that they usually go for a nibble. All lilies are toxic. It's trying to think of what that. Oh, African violets are fine too. But yeah, you really just need to do that. Incidentally, you always also want to look at the list for outdoor plants that are okay for cats, because you know there's certain flowers that are not a good idea. Like I said, like lilies. Anything to add, Denny?
No, there's really detailed list online.
There is a
I-
detailed list, and I have to look at
checked it
them.
number
I have
of
like, you know, I have Ichi, the nibbler, and then Cleo, the plant killer.
All right, well, that sounds good. I think at this time we will close things out for the questions in the Q&A portion. Denny and Susan, if you have any closing remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday and hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Tron.
Thank you for attending, and we will see you all soon later on this month.
Everyone,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tron.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Tron.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.